Good evening and welcome to the April 23rd, 2024 meeting of the Milton Select Board. Before we begin, please join us as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for that. Before we begin with public comment, Fred Hansen was a reporter for the Patriot Ledger for more than 4 decades. And for as long as we can remember, he covered civic events here in Milton. And in covering us and in covering our events, he was part of our community. And it was always a joy to see Fred and talk about the latest book he was reading, or something about history, or something about sports. It was always enjoyable to talk to Fred, and it's a great loss. His sudden passing just the week before last was a great loss to certainly to us, to all of his colleagues at the Patriot Ledger, and to his family and friends. And so, before we have a moment of silence, I don't know if anyone else wants to say anything about Fred. But I know Mr. Wells has knew him quite well. But
thank you, Mr.
Richard,
Chair. So you're correct. I've known Mr. Hansen for more years than I can count, both in my role before I was chief, when I was on the police department, in the 7 years that I've been here. Fred's one of the people who many nights sat in the audience, like we see here tonight, and really never said a word. He just copied what he heard. He wrote stories about the issues that we covered. He would, in his coolest of ways, highlight and create a story out of often things that we didn't even know. For me, particularly in my time as chief, there were issues where many times I was with Fred at things that were joyous, and oftentimes there were things that were very tragic. And Fred was extremely proud of his time with the Ledger. The Ledger was a much bigger place in its heyday when it was located over off of Center Street, where actually I think BJ's is now, was their main offices years ago. And I suppose if Fred was sitting here tonight, and I think Elaine Carroll is probably the one person who can relate to this as his colleague who sat here many nights with him. Fred, as much as he will be missed and as much as he served his community and his profession so well, I think he would probably chuckle in his own quiet way that he died with his boots on, because he actually dropped dead as he was leaving Braintree Town Hall 2 weeks ago after covering the Braintree School Committee meeting. And I think Fred, if he would have picked that way and would have write the story himself, I can only imagine in his own extraordinary way it would have been an extraordinary story. So God rest his soul, and thank Fred for all he did for this community and for so many others in his journalistic ways for so many decades. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So if we may, just if you could join us just for a moment of silence for the memory of Fred Hansen. Thank you for that. Item 3 is public comment. By policy, we allot 21 minutes, up to 21 minutes for public comment, up to 3 minutes per speaker. Mr. Milano will keep track of the 21 minutes. I will keep track of the 3 minutes. And what we typically do is alternate between those in person and those online. We start with those in person. So if there's anyone here for public comment in person, if you could come up and sign in, please, with your name and address, and then tell us your name and address, and then you'll have up to 3 minutes. But the clock won't start until you start. So.
Great. So, good evening, everyone. My name is Tucker Smith. I'm a resident of Milton, 1632 Canton Avenue, 45 years. And I'm here to support the incredible work that the Climate Action Planning Committee has been doing, and in particular to support the recommendation to increase its members from 9 to 11 people. The commitment to research and write a climate action plan is significant, and especially tailoring it to Milton's particular needs. I'd say it needs more worker bees, more human resources in order to efficiently and successfully accelerate this project. The climate clock really is ticking, not only in Milton but everywhere. And in order to meet the state's mandate of net zero by 2050, it would be extremely helpful if they had additional volunteer resources. So I encourage you to support that. Thank you.
Thank you, Tucker. All right.
Nobody has their hands up.
No one has their hands up online. All right. Do we have anyone else here in person who wishes to participate in Citizen Speak? And online, if there's a telephone, it would be *9. *9. There you go. Now I'm getting it. I'm
You don't have to
finally
get the
getting it
tattoo.
after a whole year. All right, last chance. Anyone who wants to participate in Citizen Speak? Going once, going twice? All right, on we go.
Mr. Chair, could we,
yes.
is there any chance we could move up, is it 22 public comment response? I want to just,
Public comment response.
Response is 18.
18, yeah, could we move that up, just since she's here? I'll just be brief.
Sure, sure.
So,
If there's no objection.
Is that all right?
Huh?
Mr. Chair, so this is an action item on the agenda as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Number 8, we're going to vote to do we're going to
I could
address.
comment on that. All right, so I'll do it then, very good.
Okay.
I'll comment then, very
Okay,
good.
great.
I withdraw my request.
Okay, all right, great.
So we won't even have to do that tonight.
All right. Item 4, Neponset River Watershed Association and the Metropolitan Area Planning Council update on the Neponset River Watershed Regional Climate Resilience Collaborative and Flood Model Phase 2 project. That's a mouthful.
It is. It is. We're working on the title. Resilient Neponset is what we're.
That's
gonna be
that's much better. Much
We even
better.
have a logo we'll be unveiling.
All right.
Very exciting. All right. Let me see.
If you could just make sure to introduce yourselves and talk into the microphone so everyone can hear you, not only here, but all the people watching at home.
I'll start while she's working on the computer. Martin Pillsbury, the Director of Environmental Planning at the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, which is your local friendly neighborhood regional planning agency to which Milton and all the surrounding communities belong.
And my name is Carrie Snyder. I'm the Managing Director for Community Resilience at the Neponset River Watershed Association. So we are here to just update you on a project that is completing its second year this June. And Milton has been a strong partner throughout. So we just wanted to let you know how things are going and where we're headed.
Great.
So for those of you and those in the audience who might not know who the Neponset River Watershed Association is, we are a member-supported nonprofit conservation organization covering 14 cities and towns from Foxborough all the way up to Boston. And our mission is to protect and clean up the Neponset River and its watershed lands. And we do that through a variety of programs, including public education, outreach, and advocacy.
And the Metropolitan Area Planning Council is the regional planning agency designated by state legislation some 60 years ago in the early 60s to cover a planning district that includes 101 municipalities, kind of with Boston at the center, but we go, as you can see on this map, up at the North Shore as far as Ipswich, down to the South Shore as far as Duxbury, and out to the Metro West Route I-495 region. So Milton here is close to the center of the region and is part of a couple of our different subregions. We have nearly half the population of the entire state in this one region, and then there's 12 other regions that share the other half. So we're just disproportionately large region. We're fortunate being a large region to have some pretty good staff resources and technical resources, including GIS mapping and that sort of thing. And watershed planning is one of the things that we've done. And actually, MAPC has partnered with the Neponset River Watershed Association on previous projects as well, including the Neponset Stormwater Partnership, which is another initiative that Milton has been participating in. So we sort of have a long history. I enjoy working with the Watershed Association. We have a lot of common goals in mind, and this project on climate resilience is a good example of that for today. So starting off with maybe just giving a little bit of a very broad brush introduction and context setting. The project we're working on has a lot of focus on flooding. There's a very sophisticated flood model that's been developed and is continuing to be evolved. But we also want to remember that climate change has many other impacts that we're concerned about, including, on the coastal side, sea level rise. You're just a little bit beyond the sea level rise here, but not far with, tidal river nearby. Wind and, extreme, more and more of these extreme events that seem to be happening more frequently. And high temperatures, that we seem to be getting more, and especially in urbanized areas where you have more buildings and asphalt, that just exacerbates the high temperatures, which really are having an impact on sort of a public health impact on at least the parts of the population that are most vulnerable to those sorts of things. So there's lots of different ways in which these changes in our climate are then having consequences both on our built environment, our infrastructure, our people, and like I mentioned, public health, our economy. There's many, many ways that all of these things are stranded together. And so a project like this that we're working on hopefully will have sort of benefits that reach out in many different ways over long term, but it is also a long-term problem. It's a long-term project. So it's the kind of thing we need to sort of keep at it and keep moving ahead to sort of see some incremental progress on this. It's not unlike your previous speaker who was talking about the climate adaptation plan, where that's dealing with the other major aspect of climate, of reducing the greenhouse gases, so we do what we can to reduce how severe the problem is. This project is recognizing that no matter what we do, we have some degree of climate change already happening, already baked into the process, and we need to then also be better prepared for that and to increase our resilience. So that's kind of the philosophy and the goal for this kind of a project.
So first, I want to thank Milton for being a leader in climate resilience building and for joining with us not only on the Neponset Stormwater Partnership, but also this Resilient Neponset project. So we are in phase 2 of the project. We began in August of 2022, and we're going to run through at least June of 2025. One of the major deliverables of this project is a computer flood model of the entire watershed. And the reason we felt it was important to do this and come together around this is that water doesn't stop at the town border. What happens upstream affects what's happening downstream, and so we wanted to make sure that we had a tool that you and other municipal officials could use to plan for climate resilience. So this is just one example. On the left, we see the % increase in flooded areas, so where we expect flooding to spread in 2070. And then on the right, it's an increase in volume or depth of some of that flooding. So perhaps we're seeing flooding in similar areas that we see now, but we're going to see more water in those areas. And this is just another way of looking at it. So this looks at part of Milton right around Pine Tree Brook. And this is looking at the 100-year event. So this would be a rain event that has a 1% chance of happening in any given year. The blue you see is what FEMA has mapped out as the floodplain, but the green is where our model says the floodplain really is. FEMA is backwards looking, whereas this model is trying to incorporate more updated rainfall data and trying to make predictions. The orange is where we expect that flooding to expand to in 2070. And again, this is a rain event that has a 1% chance of happening annually. So we hope that this can be a tool. It is not because it's watershed-wide, we can't use it to plan a specific project, but it can help us identify areas of higher risk so that, for further study, so that we can take a closer look at them, maybe model a community-based, a neighborhood area, and come up with some strategies that might reduce the impact of this changing rainfall. Another deliverable for this project was to come up with a framework around which all of the towns in the Neponset River watershed could come together to work on regional solutions to all climate impacts. So not just flooding, but the impacts of heat waves and windstorms, because no community can do this by themselves. It's expensive to do adaptation projects, and again, because we're all going to be feeling the same impacts, it makes sense for us to work together because we're working towards the same thing. So last year we came up with this proposed framework. We went through all of the town's existing plans, so hazard mitigation plans, open space and recreation plans, MVP plans, and we brought municipal staff together to really prioritize these shared issues. And we came up with a framework document. What we're going to be doing in phase 2 is we're working on a work plan which will sort of guide how the towns can work together and what makes sense, what regional projects make sense to work on together. We also held a workshop to sort of identify best practices in regulatory updates that will help communities grow in a sustainable and resilient manner. We had our second workshop just last week where we talked about green infrastructure and showed some examples and case studies of how green infrastructure has been implemented in surrounding towns and what that might look like in the Neponset. And finally, another big part of the project is public engagement. In order to get things done at the town level, you need public support, and for the public to support it, it needs to take into consideration their top concerns. So we're trying to build capacity among the public to engage around climate resilience building, and help them communicate better with planning agencies, et cetera. So we go out and this is a King Tide event we did recently. So we're getting people out there on field trips. We're holding public meetings. We're in the classroom. We visit 5th grade classrooms throughout the watershed to talk about stormwater pollution and flooding, as well as water conservation. And we're always doing, just general education about climate change. So what's next? We have a community advisory group that we've assembled that's meeting quarterly, and that's a group of residents, primarily from community-based organizations, and we're trying to empower them to engage more in this work. We've got our Climate Collaborative Steering Committee, which will be working on the work plan for the collaborative, and we'll have our main public meeting for this fiscal year on June 11th, and we'll be sending out some promotional materials about that very soon. That's it. for
Great,
now.
thank you, Carrie, and thank you, Martin. Comments or questions from the members? Ms. Musto.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Just a question about, I know you identified areas where it would possibly flood in Milton. We border a lot of towns, Quincy, Boston, and so forth. So on the borders, do you also have mapping if it's, another town that we abut, like Quincy or something? Do you have that so we can see if there's anything, say, very close to our border?
We do. So
Okay.
this model is the entire freshwater portion of the watershed. So because we wanted to show sort of where this water is moving from outside of Milton into Milton, we have a separate project that's ongoing on the estuary side. So from the Baker Dam
Right.
to the harbor, but this model is from the Baker Dam upstream.
Okay. So like High Park, for instance?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Other comments or questions? Mr. Zoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for this extraordinarily important work that's really needed now more than ever. I first want to say I love the logo. If that was your sample logo.
Thank you.
Really, I love that footprint, and I think resilient Neponset is fantastic. And the Neponset River, it always blows my my mind when I'm driving around how windy
Yeah.
that river is. And I grew up in the Midwest where the river's just kind of one direction for a long time. I know, I'm sorry about that. All right, well, here, now I get the feedback. Anyways, I complimented the logo, so I want that to be on the record. So the Neponset River, very, very twisty, turny. It's kind of a wild basin when you look at it system-wide. In your presentation, you talked about the 1 in 100 year event, and I just want to go back to that real quick for my question, because I think last year in Vermont we saw a 1 in 100 year event. It was more like a 1 in 1,000 year event. And we hear this get thrown around a lot when we watch the weather in the news lately, that we're seeing 100 events every 10 years, every, much more often than we might see. So I'm just curious, and as you do the planning around these large events, are you planning specifically for those events? And do you have like a direct line in to FEMA, to the governor, so that if we're seeing a system move in that might generate that kind of rainfall, that municipalities can put some preventative measures in place to the extent that is possible?
Yes, so everybody is pretty much working from the same data set in Massachusetts. We've got a really good data set, and almost everybody who's predicting this is looking out to 2070. In 2070, the 500-year storm of today is going to be the 100-year storm of 2070. So we already know that we're headed in that direction, and so ideally, everybody's going to be moving quickly to really catch up, so that we're not behind. But that's going to take everybody working together and being pretty aggressive.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Other comments or questions? Mr.
Thank you,
Wells.
Mr. Chair. Thank you both. I follow the Neponset very closely. I sit on our committee here. I attend Sean's meetings, regular meetings. I'm familiar with the work that Senator Golden started on Save the Harbor, Save the Bay, with his outlook from the saltwater side coming in. So there are a million questions I could talk about, but I'm going to not do that to you tonight.
I know, I apologize, it's a lot of information.
I know, and I think just to kind of give like an overview of what, in a layman's term, is when you look at the coastal preparedness, that homes along the seacoast, all the way from the Neck across Wallaston down through Situate, how they're preparing there, in a way, what I believe I'm seeing is that for communities like us upstream are going to have to be proactive in how we zone, build, reconstruct, things of that nature.
Yes.
To make way for this. The only question I just want, and I probably shouldn't ask you, maybe I'll bring it up at the next committee, the regular meeting, is that in the cleanup, in the EP, in the Superfund cleanup, particularly on the upland stream area, if they were to dredge the river deeper, if they were to take more out to allow for more water to be held in the body of the river from Baker Dam to the Mother Brook, do you think that, and I know I'm asking you $1 million question because it just popped in my head, because I know the effects of dredging, but yeah, I never thought of it in respect to a freshwater dredge. Do you think that would help to give you more, to be able to hold more water in the main stream as compared to, perhaps prevent some of that runoff? And you don't even have to answer that.
Yeah.
It just came, but I think you know what I mean. I think you kind of get what I'm.
And that is something. So we are always looking for more funding for these studies. And one of the things we want to look at is sort of the relationship between the flow from the Charles through Mother Brook downstream. What happens if we take the T&H Dam out, for example, because it's in terrible disrepair, and it's not neither that nor the Baker Dam are flood control dams, so I'm not sure we can ever use it like that. But that is definitely something we want to take a closer look at and really model that so that we can make some better predictions.
Okay.
If I could, maybe I'll add to that a little bit. I think that what we're looking at in the watershed, the thing that would do more than trying to hold more water in the river is find places on the land in the areas that contribute towards the river.
disperse it, right,
to hold back the water, to have more retention. Everything from little rain gardens on lots of little properties to something larger. In fact, we're looking for places where we can actually do that. And that would, you want to prevent the water from getting into the main stem of the river to begin with. Once it's there, you've lost the battle. It doesn't take much to fill up whatever you could dredge out
Whatever it
there.
is that you
know, a
hold.
10-year storm even would probably fill that up. So that might have other benefits, but I think that really you want to look for places to retain and store the water throughout the watershed. And it's one of those things, like, you remember the phrase 1,000 points of light? It's like 1,000 points of retention. If we could just find, so it'll take a long time to do that, but if we can kind of readapt our watersheds back to function a little bit more like they did before we paved them all over to begin with, we could actually coexist. We'd still have development, but have it not interfering with the hydrologic cycle as much. So that's what I would say.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I won't ask any more questions.
We love those questions.
Other comments or questions? Mr. Zoll.
Just a quick follow-up on that. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the rain garden concept is something that I've run into. I think, in a town like Milton, which has an abundance of single-family housing with yards, a lot of which are just grass and not so great in terms of the absorption. I wonder do you all put on clinics or instructions or classes, maybe with like local, here or, with local gardening clubs about how to design or create a rain garden? Because I hear you, it's sort of the climate change battle in a nutshell, right? Like everybody needs to pitch in and do something, and communities need to work together. And we can't just sit back and assume that we're going to be able to zone, 50 acres of floodplain to absorb. If we could get, some of the, 10,000 plus single-family unit homes to put in just a small rain garden, it would make a pretty big difference. I'm curious if you put on workshops or how you're looking at moving that to individuals.
You guys have done some school work, right?
I think we've done something like that in the past, and we're always looking for other ways to, help people do take action on their own level, their own scale. So that is something that we're talking about, and if that's something you would like to see, I've left my card, send me an email, remind me, and we will definitely look at, because maybe we could hook up with the Milton Garden Club or something like that. So.
And at the level of what the town can do, like on public facilities, et cetera, one of the tools we've recently developed is a computer model that you can take a look at the parcels of land in your town, characteristics on soil slope and that sort of thing, and identify sites that could be favorable for on-site retention, whether it's a rain garden or a swale or other kinds of things. So that's a tool that we actually were just trying out and showing to the folks at this workshop we held a couple of weeks ago, and that's available online at our site. So.
Yeah, because I see Glover Elementary School is in the green here, and that's obviously town property. Right. And then the high school and where the new middle school is going to be are also right up against that. So both of those would seem to be places where we could potentially work together and figure some solutions out. Thank you.
Other comments or questions?
Oh, good. Thank you.
Martin and Carrie, you said the public meeting is June 12th?
June 11th.
June 11th?
Yes.
And that will be, is that something that we can help publicize, or that you are publicizing?
I would love
or?
that. Thank
I don't
you.
know that, maybe you can connect with our town administrator and make sure we get the word out here in Milton about that meeting as
Yes,
well.
and it's a virtual meeting, so, we're trying to make it as easy as possible for as many people to join us as possible.
Yeah, maybe we can put it on our website to
Yeah.
help out with the public, publicity.
Appreciate that.
So,
Thank you.
thank you very much. Appreciate it. Keep us up to date.
Will do. Thank you again
Thanks so much.
for your help.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
June 11th, that's right. All right. Item 5, we are joined by the chair of our local historic district study committee, Larry Loffer, who has a presentation on warrant article 40 for the establishment of a local historic district commission and the Milton Village Historic District. Welcome, Larry.
I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you for inviting me. I'm Larry Loffer. I've been living in Milton since 1994 at 196 Cliff Road, not too far from here. 6 years ago, the Select Board decided that they were listening to the Milton Historical Commission, who wanted to name a local historic district here in town. 3 years ago, that committee was actually set up. In the last 3 years, we have studied federal historic districts, state historic districts, getting down to local historic district, what we should do here. What is history? Why is it important? How can we protect our town? And how can we let our town grow? We're here since 1662. I'm going to assume if we're not underwater, we're going to be here another couple of hundred years. And I think it's important that we save some of the history. In our study, we never had any intention of ever doing anything that would either slow growth or cause problems. We wanted to allow growth to happen because Milton has benefited from that growth for hundreds of years now, and we wanted to let that continue. So in that process, we started first with the federal historic districts. We have 6 or 7 of them here in the town. It depends on, whether you want to include the cemetery or not. It's not going anywhere. We don't have to worry about it going anywhere. But we wanted to know how and why something is named historical from the federal level, then from the state level, and then what we wanted to do is it comes down to the local level. We never touched the local level for the first year and a half because we really wanted to understand what was going on, not just here in Milton, but across the state. And across the state, there's over 350 communities that could have local historic districts. 166 or 167, I think we would be 168 if we get voted in on this. The good news is, in doing all of this work and talking to all these different committees, we have a great deal of support for the idea of protecting Milton. Because as a town, we also have some people with some concerns, and I can address those concerns now, and I will at the town meeting. The first concern that the Warren Committee had was that it was somehow going to slow growth. Well, what we did is we invited the actual Milton residents who are actually doing the development in Milton Village, which is the area we're designating first. We invited them to not just one public meeting, but several public meetings, and we engaged them. Their concern, like every developer, is don't slow us down, don't charge us more, don't set up hoops that we have to jump through. And we were very carefully listened to that. And yes, because not my committee, and I'm going to talk about this in a moment, not my committee, but the next committee that is created from this, if we go forward, that committee is the one that has the power to make decisions about what we're going to include, what we're going to exclude. We have a lot of that in our bylaw. But when we got down to the local level, we had to talk to the state because our proposal first had to be approved by the state. The state has a variety of promulgated forms that other towns have used, and we were given those forms, and we worked with those forms to create our form. But we didn't create any of these forms. These forms were put in place because this is a two-step process. You first name a district, then you name the commission within that proposal, and that commission begins to do the nuts and bolts of how you're going to apply all of the different aspects of what we're trying to protect. And so we are not worried that we're going to slow down, especially the 2 developers that I spoke to that live in the Milton Village and work in the Milton Village area. We're not going to slow them down at all. Their proposals are already into town, and it's moving through its process. So I'm not worried about the development. These people are savvy. They're not people from away, as they say in Maine. They're people who are right here, who care about the town, and their concern is don't slow them down. We're not going to be the impediment for that. One of the concerns that the Warren Commission had was that this second commission that is appointed, elected, assigned, however we do that, that they're going to have too much power. I'm a volunteer. Most of the people on the Warrant Commission are volunteers. This town benefits from the caring of our community that stands up and said, I don't need anything for this, I'm here for my community. Most of those people aren't power hungry. This isn't an HOA. This is a community town meeting. And so I'm really not worried about whether they are appointed or elected. Elected puts a little more onus on the person who wants to be on the committee. Being appointed is kind of, hey, do you want to do it? And we have the ways in which the people are going to be appointed, much like my committee was appointed. The final thing is the Warrant
Chair?
Commission was...
Yes, Mr. Well.
You keep referring to the Warrant Commission. I think you're talking about the Warrant Committee.
I'm sorry?
Yes,
Referring to
yeah,
the Warrant Committee,
yeah,
okay.
yeah, that's right.
I'm,
Yeah.
I'm hearing Warrant Commission. I'm like, Warrant
No,
Commission?
no, Warrant Committee, yeah. He meant he means Warrant.
It's a
Committee.
committee.
Yeah, that's all.
It's a
Yeah.
committee. It's a
Yeah.
warrant-
Oh, I called it a
warrant-
commission.
Yeah, Warrant Committee, and I'm sitting here going...
Thank you for...
I thought you took it from somewhere
Yeah,
else other
hey, I'm
than
a
here.
volunteer.
That's all right, I get it. All right.
Thank you for that. The final concern they had, and we have this too, in this proposal, it states that you can be fined $5 to $500 a day for anything that you do wrong. So that's a lot. That is a lot. How are we going to collect that? Who's going to do that? What are the rules? That is not our committee to determine. But we had to create a bylaw. And if it's a bylaw, it's a law. And so the concern with the Warrant Committee is that someone could come in and all filled with, hey, I don't want this or I don't want that. I want everybody to have white picket fences. It's not set up for that to be permitted at all. If you read the proposal, we were very careful. We did not want to be one of those towns, and as much as I love it, like Nantucket, where everything has to be uniform. We didn't want that because that's not what Milton is. Milton is great because of its diversity, because it has grown over the years and different areas have grown, and we continue to do that. We want to allow that. So those are the three concerns that the Warrant Committee had. We were just thrilled that we are near the end of the first process. And this first process from here goes to the town meeting, where we're going to need a 2/3 vote on this. We haven't got much pushback at all from anybody about, is this a good idea or a bad idea? We have some concerns, but no pushback, which is rare in town politics. So we're hoping that we can answer the simple questions that the Warrant Committee had for us before the town meeting. And personally, as a chairman, I don't care if the next committee is elected or appointed. Makes no difference to me personally. But I'm not on the select board. I'm not going to make that determination. It's going to be made after my committee has done its work. Our process was top-down. We studied the national first. We went to the state. It's really interesting, and I don't have enough time now to tell you 3 years of study, but it's really fascinating about what towns find to be important. And it's always an important building, and Milton has a number. It's the fact that the Industrial Revolution was changed because of the Neponset River going by the Baker Chocolate Factory, and there was a steel mill there, and it changed the way industry was working in the United States, and that started here. So many different things. We are going to have to go back to the state with the final elected proposal. But if there are any changes because the town has accepted it, they accept it. Unless it's something egregious, and it wouldn't be. We know what would be egregious. And none of these things are. I think we didn't even show that boring PowerPoint, did we, Nick?
We got it today.
Well, if it's boring, Larry,
We got it
maybe
today.
that's a good thing.
Well, what it is, this PowerPoint, do you want to pull it up? And
I've already seen it.
Distributed to the board members, so they have seen it.
We've seen it.
Oh.
We've seen it.
Maybe we can go to comments and questions then, if everyone's seen it.
Questions are better.
Yeah, comments and questions?
Mr. Chair, just a point, can we
Yes.
put it on the website? Is that
Yes,
doable?
we can do that.
All right,
Yeah.
that all right with you, sir? If we
I'm
put-
sorry?
You all right if we put it up
I'm
on
hard
the-
of hearing, and you're
Are you-
hard for me to hear.
Are you all right if we put it up on
And
the website?
that's a surprise, right?
That's all right, no. Are you okay if we put it up on the town website so residents can see it?
Oh, absolutely,
Okay, all right.
absolutely. And I denigrated it. It has all of the information that's necessary. It's not pretty. I like pretty.
Other comments or questions? Ms. Musto?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. With regards to the fines, it's pretty wide, $5 to $500. So I'm just wondering, I suppose that would be something for the next committee to be.
It is.
To be looking at. And I'm just wondering what other towns are doing. So I would
Yes.
anticipate they'd probably look at some
Yes.
of these issues that you brought up.
Yes.
Compared to other towns that
Yes.
have it.
And that is
locally,
exactly
yeah.
the case. And the other side of that is, how are you going to collect this money?
Right.
You know, so what the fine is, if someone is going to be fined, that's going to be determined by the next committee.
Okay.
Mr. Wells?
So the fine's not really an issue for me. I think the fine can be written into the bylaws, as any other zoning fine.
Yeah.
I mean, I know a little bit about fining, so
Yeah.
I don't see that as being, my only question is, so I have two questions. Has the warrant committee voted, Mr. Chair, whether or not to approve? Have they-
Yes.
So they've approved?
No.
They did not approve?
No.
Okay. And my second question is, elected versus appointed, where did the thought of an elected come from?
I'm sorry, ask again?
You said elected versus appointed.
Oh,
Where did
elected
Where did the thought of elected come from?
From the warrant committee. The warrant committee thought if you're appointed, you have too much power, and the committee becomes too powerful. Those were their two concerns about that. And my thing is, the person who brought it up is appointed. I'm appointed, you know, and
I just don't know how you get people to run for that. I mean, it's a lot of work to run for anything, just, never
Yeah.
mind. That's just my own thought. So if the warrant committee voted no, Mr. Chair, is that what you're saying?
That's right. The warrant committee voted to not support the recommendation, to not move forward with it. Let me ask Mr. Laffer, I don't believe they voted to send it back. They voted not to move forward with it. The current proposal, Mr. Laffer, is appointed. Is that right?
yes.
Okay, that's the
Yes.
current proposal. So it would
And-
have to be amended at town meeting to make it elected.
Right, right.
I see.
And even the $5 to $500, even that's all going to be changed by the next committee, which
Right.
the warrant committee didn't quite understand. They didn't quite, that there's two separate, complete entities. I think appointed people are just as good as elected people. Especially in this town, you know?
Mr. Zoll. Oh,
No,
Mr.
go
Zoll.
ahead, I'm just thinking out loud, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would just echo, I think, Mr. Wells's comments about, I think it's hard and expensive to run for office in this town. And I also feel like when you have an appointed committee, you can really select people who understand and kind of
Right.
create a committee that has a diverse
Right.
field of,
Right.
some historians, some architects, some business
Right.
community representatives, some local folks, so that you have a good mix of
Yeah.
people, whereas if it's elected, it's kind of +7
Yeah.
positions would be intense. So I'm a little surprised that the warrant committee thought that would be a good idea, but it is what it is. I think my one question is more of a comment, I think, but for those of us, and unfortunately, I guess not everybody got their warrant, but for those of us who got our warrant, the part about the commission where it consists of 7 members, and I gather from Mr. Milano that this came up at the warrant committee, that it says 2 members to be appointed for 1 year, 2 for 2, and 2 for 3. And I'm not a math whiz, but 2 + 2 + 2 is 6, and not 7. So I'm guessing that we would have to amend that to have one of the
Yes.
slot.
Yes.
Would you have a recommendation about which one would be?
We absolutely do. So it was 7 members, meant to be 7 members, as my committee was meant to be 7 members. It's hard over 3 years with all the meetings, it's hard to keep volunteers engaged and active on it.
You're preaching to the choir.
Yeah, of course I am. Yes, but in terms of expertise, we're going to have somebody who's a realtor, a higher level of real estate agent, a AIA architect, someone who has a higher degree in architecture. We'd like to have an attorney on our committee, but we don't have a land attorney. That'd be great to have. 2 members who live in the area, Milton Village,
Right.
or have businesses. And one of those, I would suggest, I've already been lobbying him he should be on that board, so he has a voice on it. And then there's going to be a committee person at large from anywhere in the town, and there's going to be somebody from the Historical Commission, because the Select Board appointed us at the Historical Commission's recommendation, and my committee has a representative from the Historical Commission on my board. Very, very helpful, because they know the lay of the land.
Thank you. So that partially answers my question. My other question is, we're going to have to amend that particular section 4.1 because the numbers don't add up. It's
Yes.
6. So would you have a recommendation? Would you recommend that we appoint 3 for the first year, and then 2, and then 2? Or would
Yes.
you?
Yeah.
Okay. That was my other question. Thank you.
I wonder how many volunteers, say, okay, come on for 3 years.
Yeah, that was my
I
thinking,
was
too.
told a year. That
Yeah.
seemed pretty good.
And they could potentially re-up if they wanted to after they serve the 1-year term.
I think once you get involved in something like this, and I can only talk for my committee, that the people who were they were dedicated to it, and everybody put a lot of effort into creating this.
It's very clear from this, so thank you very much for this work.
Thank you.
Gee, hard to run for elective office. I don't know where you get that. I don't know how that happens. Other comments or questions? All right, so we have obviously put this on the warrant. I don't think the board has taken a position yet. We could defer on this until town meeting, if that's what the board wishes to do, and look into it further.
Can I ask a
And-
procedural question?
Yes, Mr. Zoll.
Are we going to be going through the whole warrant to sort of yay or nay each of the individual articles? Or
We've done that with some of them.
Yeah.
We could do that tonight, or we could do it with some of them, or we could do it at town meeting.
The night of town meeting,
The
each
night of
night,
town
yeah.
meeting.
The
Yeah.
night of town meeting is usually the better the month before.
All right.
At least
Yeah.
it's mine.
So, other comments or questions? Mr.
I'm with you, Mr.
Wells.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm with you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to, I didn't realize it, that's why I asked you. I didn't know where the warrant committee was on this. So I'd like to, my dad grew up in that business district. I went to work there when I was 15 years old. Anyone who knows me knows I have a deep affinity for it, which is why I understand the reason I was here 6 years ago when this
Yeah.
board was first. So I don't want to see it fail. So I'd like us to have, I'm more inclined to defer it versus vote it down and try to see what we do. Maybe we could go before the warrant committee ourselves. And do we know what the vote was? Was it like close? Was it?
Mr.
Do you know what it was?
Milano?
I don't recall.
Okay. We
And is
can-
it,
I
and
have
is
it in
it,
my
notes. Look
is-
into
is
that.
much of the reason because they're concerned that they think it should be elected versus appointed?
No, I don't think that was a big thrust, and the general laws require it be appointed, so I think that's a moot point anyway.
Okay,
I just
all
double checked that. I think some of the comments that Mr. Loffer was addressing, which the warrant committee raised, he was raising some points in comparison. I think they talked about concerns about process for potential projects down there. We are aware of 2 potential between J.D.
Right,
Wild
right,
and
right.
Hajar's project. So I think there's concern about that and the impact it might have on those. The warrant committee comments are out now. It's online. You should be getting your warrant report. So
if I
so it's
may,
in there.
Mr. Chair, I can to briefly summarize the three reasons that they stated are they believe it's a hurdle for business development. They believe that it shouldn't be an appointed committee, or this appointed committee shouldn't have this kind of power, and they believe that the fines are too variable, which I think all three of those questions have been answered pretty succinctly tonight. So I'm kind of a mind that we should think about supporting this tonight, and then I think that maybe the warrant committee wants to come and create suggestions for what they might accept, but to just say no and not even to vote to send it back seems to be a real rejection of a lot of significant work that's been done by some really dedicated volunteers of this town. And I think that we should support them, but also express our willingness to continue to modify. Like I said earlier, there's already one amendment here that we would have to make, but I think the general thrust of the article is good, and I think in the absence of a commission like this, we're actually at more risk than we are than having a commission.
I wonder, Mr. Zoll, if the better course is to come up with the amendments and then vote, rather than just vote and then come up with the amendments, to come up with the amendments and then to make the fixes and then have the vote, rather than just to kind of do it in a vacuum. But
yeah, because I think, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry to jump in.
Please, yeah.
If the objection is the variable amounts of the fine, like Ms. Musto referred to earlier, we could probably say something along the lines of the commissions shall set the fines and maybe put a ceiling on it, but not a floor, so that it doesn't go too high.
Yeah, that's a good solution.
So this board.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
That's how many fines out. I believe that's probably why, because depending on the egregiousness of what the offense is, I mean, $5 might not be enough.
Right.
So you have to give them the ability
to go up to a
find
particular.
high. I think you do, and I mean, my gut is this is going to come. Anything is going to come down to inspectional services. That's who enforces fines on the civil side in this town. So I'm kind of inclined to I'd like us to go before them and talk to them. Whether it's a couple, I don't care who it is, but that's my thought.
Thank you. I'd like to hear more about the warrant committee's decision and how they came about with that decision before we start approving anything. I think the concept is a good one, and I think a lot of good work has been done. And I think that to vote it either way today, I think is a little short-sighted. That would be my take on it. It's on the warrant. It's going to come up at town meeting, and we could certainly discuss it before town meeting as well.
Yeah, let me suggest also that either the committee, Mr. Laffer's committee, or this board could offer amendments to try to address some of the concerns of the warrant committee and try to get some consensus. So that could happen prior to town meeting. So it could either be done, Mr. Laffer, by the means of a green sheet, which, if your committee, which I believe is the sponsoring authority for the article. Was it us, or was it I think it was your...
That's the way I understood
it. The study commission, I believe. But were they the submitting article? It's right after the article.
It's a long article, a lot of work. Submitted by the committee.
Right. So Mr. Laffer, you could your committee could make proposed amendments
Sure.
if you voted proposed amendments
Sure.
prior to town meeting, and issue them what's called a green sheet, so that the town meeting members would
What
get
is it
them.
called again? I'm sorry.
A green sheet.
A green
so it's
sheet.
actually a green piece of paper, right?
Yeah.
That all the town meeting members will get as proposed amendments prior or right at the
As they
beginning
are.
of town meeting, as they come into town meeting, and then the warrant committee's obligation at that time would be to consider the amendments. So that may be the best course for your committee to propose amendments. See if your committee agrees, right, to propose amendments. Have a green sheet, and then that would be considered by both this board and by the warrant committee right prior to town meeting or at
Sure.
the floor of town meeting.
Sure.
And then at least the town meeting members will have it in writing rather than have it proposed, just orally at town meeting.
Okay.
So I think that might be the best course if there are amendments to be made. Just do it, Mr. Wells.
Do we know where Mr. O'Donnell was on this? I mean, to me, Steve's the guy his committee's just worked so hard for so long on historic issue. Was there a member of the Historic Commission on your committee?
Bill Mullen,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
he's the one with us.
So,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Zoll.
I think that's a good solution. I think, just to point out too, that when town meeting members see the green sheet, they understand that they're friendly amendments. So they understand that they're being made in the spirit of the body that put it together
Sure.
is trying to tighten up the language. So I think my recommendation would be,
322.
Yeah, 322. I think you might want to get rid of the floor of the fees, and then be more explicit that the commission will set.
It can be anything.
Yeah, I think to be determined by the commission, and then as we've heard from Mr. Milano, the third concern of the warrant committee, we can't really. It is supposed to be an appointed committee. It's
Right.
not an elected committee, so that's
Right.
kind of a moot point. So I think if you address those two concerns plus that concern being a moot point, that should for the warrant committee at least answer their questions.
And I don't think that we as a committee, we're all appointed. We're happy to be, to have it continue in that way.
Right.
Well, I think it has to. So
Sounds
Yeah,
like
I think it has to. I don't think it's
It
any,
has
I
to.
don't
It's
think,
not
I
a
don't think.
question.
Yeah, good.
So thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Mr. Loffer, we'll look forward to a green sheet.
Thank you. Look
right.
forward to
And-
thank you so much for your help.
And Mr.
Thank you.
Milano can help you with that in terms of, how we, if your committee decides on amendments, just how you process green sheets.
Sure.
And then we'll see how it goes at town meeting.
Thank you so
Thank you
much.
for-
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Mr. Loffer.
Thank you.
All right. Item 6, we do have the Climate Action Planning Committee people here.
Don't move.
So perhaps we can
There you go.
take item 8 out of order.
I'll move to take item
Item
8 out of
7
order.
first.
Second. I'm
What's
for
that?
it.
Item
7
7?
first.
What's 7? Oh, 7
To
is,
amend the
oh,
Oh,
so
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
showing
add that.
7 as the town meeting warrant article.
That's what my
No.
7 is.
First is to recommend the appointment of, change the charge is number 7, and then to appoint is
Okay,
number 8.
so this is different then. So our
There's
motions are
7.
different.
I'm with you. My motions are
All right,
different too.
so let me go to the actual agenda.
Sorry.
That's all right.
All right, so on the agenda, so 7 is the discussion approval recommendation, that's it, you right?
Correct.
Am I right?
To amend the charge, and number 8 is to appoint the members.
Right.
So number 8, I think we're going to be deferring on, but let's have, I have it, thank you. I have it. Why don't we ask the chair of our Climate Action Planning Committee and one of the members, our former chair, so it's Mr. Hashett and Mr. Doyle, to talk to us about items 7, the recommendation, which we heard about from Ms. Smith as well.
Packet from
We
Arthur.
can hear what you have. First, item 7, thank you for joining us. Make sure we talk into the microphone so everyone, so this is, an additional packet. Arthur, is this packet any different from what we have?
That's an additional piece that
Oh, okay. Here we go.
Oh, Richard.
Richard?
explains the
Well, thanks.
recommended amendment to
Oh,
the
okay.
bylaw,
Okay.
to the
I see.
charge, rather.
I see, it's a marked draft.
Just a
Okay.
copy and that's-
All right.
My cheat is for that one.
What is that?
Who else? You going?
We're good, we're good.
So, and then you can choose.
All right, Mr. Hasha and Mr. Doyle, welcome. Item 7, recommendation of the Climate Action Planning Committee to amend the charge to add 2 additional members.
Thank you. So my name's Alexander Hasha, and I chair the Climate Action Planning Committee. And this is a request and recommendation that we voted on at our previous meeting. And Mr. Doyle is going to speak to it for me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Arthur Doyle, member of the Climate Action Planning Committee. We have before you, Mr. Chairman, and members of the Select Board, the original charge from you to the Climate Action Planning Committee with, on page 2, some recommended modifications for your consideration and decision. The base recommendation is that the Climate Action Planning Committee membership be increased from 9 to 11 members. And this is predicated principally upon the understanding, as the committee does its work, of the breadth and depth of the subject on which we are working, of the complexities that emerge, the predictions for the future, the need to have the right mix of people with the sciences and the finance and all of the other ingredients that go into the potential mitigation of climate action in a community. In that regard, we would have you consider increasing from 2 to 3 the number of residents with such expertise, and then adding to the committee a student who would be a Milton resident but may be attending any secondary school within or without the town of Milton. We did have an opportunity early this year to have a student from Milton High School meet with us. We had a very engaging discussion with that person, and based upon that, the committee unanimously recommended that we engage a student, and we have a member who has done that in his professional business, and we would ideally bring in somebody at the beginning of their junior year, have them for a 2-year term on the committee. So overall, that would be what we have before you with this particular item, number 7, and we would welcome any questions and recommendations.
Thank you, Mr. Doyle. Comments or questions? Ms. Bradley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I love the addition of a high school student to this committee. I always like to see when we can get our young adults engaged in civic interests and activities. To me, this is a wonderful addition. I'd love to see more, but 1 is good. But this is, I just am really applaud you all for thinking forward and making sure that we are including our young voices who are actually going to be the ones that are dealing with this impact of climate change, more so than I will be. So thank you for that.
Mr. Wells.
So that's what I had written down that I was going to bring earlier, and I was actually thinking above this high school student. I was thinking the possibility of staffing this committee, particularly for a semester each year with an intern from a college, one of the local colleges around here, particularly someone who's studying environmental science, things, because it's a big major now. There are a lot of new things that didn't exist when we went to college. I thought of that today, that we may want to staff with an intern if we could do that, and that might be something we might be able to coordinate through the town planner's office for you. Just a thought, but not an appointment for us. But I'm happy with the proposal you've made so far tonight here.
We would be very happy to bring that back to the committee.
Other comments? Mr. Zoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I'm supportive of this. Like Ms. Bradley and Mr. Wells, I'd love to see a high school student. For our own Milton High School, they have really strong volunteer hour requirements for graduation, and I can think of fewer options that would be attractive for a lot of students than to serve on a committee like this. And then the number of residents, I think increasing the number of residents is also very helpful, particularly when you look at the breadth, as you alluded to earlier, as we heard from earlier from our Resilient Neponset group, the breadth of the work that needs to go into planning for climate. The goals are ambitious, and if you have folks who are volunteering, as clearly you do, I say more power to you, and more power to those residents who want to get involved, because we all know that it's not easy to serve on these committees, and it's great if folks are motivated to apply. I mean, our Affordable Housing Trust, we're still looking for members, so I would say more power to you. I'm 100% supportive of this, so thank you for bringing it forward.
Other comment? Ms. Musto.
Thank you. I also, believe that it's great to have a high school student on this, so I think that's a great addition, and another member as well. It looks like the terms just to remind people, these are one-year terms, because I know you had said maybe for 2 years or so for a student. And it may end up that it works that way, but maybe there's another student who wants to be on after that. So I would say that. And for Mr. Wells's idea, perhaps that could be something as more of, a semester, like a consultant almost, doing part of their internship with the committee. But not exactly a member of the committee, but an internship with the committee, so that it wouldn't be, it would be hard to do this with somebody who's only going to be here maybe for a semester for a full year appointment. Yeah, so you could maybe incorporate both.
Two things that may be helpful, just again, the one-year appointment, that person, like other members of the committee, could be reappointed for his or her second or their second year. And also the possibility of having students who are involved in the advanced placement environmental science course, which is a university-level course curriculum.
Right.
So you're sort of mixing both together if we have somebody who's so inclined.
Thank you.
Mr. Wells?
No, go ahead.
Oh,
No?
So there's 2 points of history. The one that made me think of it was, Mr. Lonomouth, we had Josh and Tim arranged to have, were they UMass? That did
Josh
the
is
study.
gone.
But this, they did it for
Oh,
Josh.
sorry.
It's past work, it's already done.
Like, poor Josh is gone.
Josh coordinated it, but the work that was done looking at the flooding in the wharf area on that ramp. And then prior to that, most people don't even realize that the bridge that crosses Pope's Pond was designed and engineered by Northeastern interns. They did all that work. So that's what made me think about a staff intern. So I'm happy with whatever, but you've made a case of, I think everything tonight kind of highlights the importance of it. So you want a motion, Mr. Chairman?
If I may, just
If I
to
could-
add,
Mr.
you
Mr.
mentioned
I'm sorry,
Josh.
Ms. Bradley had a question, sorry.
You mentioned Josh, and one of the things that Josh told me is that he went into the career he went into because of his taking an advanced placement environmental science course when he was in high school.
There you go.
Ms. Bradley?
So if I'm correct, Mr. Chair, this was something that I was not fully on board with when it was first presented to the Select Board. And I just wanted to say thank you, because I believe it was you that pushed this through with creating this. And to see that we need to add more members to it because the residents of Milton are that excited about it just goes to show you that you did a great job. And I appreciate that, and I appreciate all of you and what you've done. So thank you for this. All of you.
Procedural question before the motion, if you
Okay,
don't mind,
I'll
Mr. Wells. So it sounds like we're deferring item 8.
I think the request is to defer item, but let's do
So,
item
but-
7.
But yes, but just on the point of for 7, so if we're coming back in a month or 2 weeks or whatever the time is to appoint members, just given, I would suggest that when we appoint, if we decide to appoint these extra members in May or June, that we give them that through June 30th
Oh, yes.
of the next year,
Yes.
right? So
Oh,
we
yes.
don't just
Oh, yeah.
appoint them for a month.
That's
Yeah.
right, that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's all I wanted to say.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes.
Sorry, Mr. Wells, go ahead.
So we're deferring 8, we're not going to?
I think, well, let's do 7, and then we'll get to 8.
All right, so
Let's do 7.
I'm going to make a motion to approve the recommendation of the Climate Action Planning Committee and to amend their charge by adding 2 additional members.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Unanimous. All right, now, item 8. The appointments, my understanding is that there's a desire to defer on this item. Is that correct, Mr. Doyle?
If we may, Mr. Chairman, yes, we would like to defer until your next meeting. We meet tomorrow night, and we now have a recommendation from the chamber for a designee to the committee. So we, as a committee, would have to approve the appointees that we would like to bring to you. It was not possible to have that done for this evening.
Great. All right, anything further? Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay.
Always nice
Thank
to
you.
see you,
Thank you,
Mr. Doyle.
Thank you. It's
Thank
always
you,
a pleasure to
and
be
you
with
as well, Alex.
Glad to be here.
He's a great chair.
Yes.
I want to say, if I may, in closing, that we started off with co-chairs. Tracy Dyke Redmond was with Alex, co-chair, and she had to retire from the committee because of a change of position that she took that would avoid a conflict of interest. and Alex has taken over the chair and has been doing an admirable job.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
All right, back to item 6, discussion update approval FY 2025 operating and capital budget. Mr. Milano or
Sure.
Ms. Bradley? Mr. Milano. Mr. Milano.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, as the board is aware, so we've gone through our process here, thanks, on setting the budget. The warrants have been sent out, so folks have that budget now, which is balanced using Governor Healy's recommended state aid figures. That's typically what we'll do as we go through this process, just with the timing by the time that the state budget progresses its way through its process. Typically, town meeting is kind of squared away on the budget already. However, timing this year is in our benefit, and we have more information than we did when we originally put the budget together. So the House of Representatives released their budget earlier this month and adjusted the state aid numbers, primarily Chapter 70 education aid, to Milton's benefit and to, well, many other communities' benefit. So I'll just walk through the numbers quickly and make a suggestion about how to incorporate these changes into the operating budget. So what I'm showing is the Governor and House numbers. As you can see, for Chapter 70, which is education aid, general education aid to Milton, is now $12.1 million, which is a $318,000 increase over what the governor's budget projected for Milton. The reason for this change is that Milton is in the category of districts that receives new state aid at $30 per pupil on the governor's budget. When the House of Representatives put their budget together, they changed that to $104 per pupil. So that change, that increase of $318,000 is driven by the House of Representatives changing how they're going to apply the Chapter 70 formula for fiscal 25. There's an adjustment on the charter tuition reimbursement. Again, they incorporate updated information, so their number's a little more updated than the governor's. For education aid, we're talking about a net increase of $270,000. The House budget did, probably because they're increasing Chapter 70 aid, reduced our general government aid, which is just general aid that comes to Milton. So that was a $76,000 reduction. Overall, that means it's a 1% increase from fiscal 24 to 25. The Mass Municipal Association is currently lobbying the House of Representatives, requesting that that number be higher. I don't know how successful that might be, but potential more changes to come. But based on where the numbers are, we expect a reduction on where we were on general government aid. There's a small change on state-owned land. So overall, we have $190,000 in additional state aid coming to Milton. And the other piece of state aid is what the state charges us in assessments. And there is a reduction in our sending tuition for charter students. So we are saving $125,000 based on the House budget. And that nets out to an overall increase of aid to Milton of $316,000, as these numbers show here. So with the governor's budget, we are actually anticipating a net decrease year over year on state aid. With the House budget, that number is going back up, which is good to see. We're not seeing any of the Chapter 70 numbers that we saw in recent years, which is unfortunate. Hopefully the state will be able to fund that at a higher clip next year. But for now, from where the budget was going to town meeting originally, we can now anticipate $316,000 more in state aid than we had at the time. And then the second piece of this is, should we spend it? So I am suggesting that we.
Yes.
I didn't see that in the agenda. Did you? Should we spend it?
So as this board is aware, the school committee have been looking for additional support to the school budget. This is, an increase on education aid, and the last request that we received from the school committee was an increase of $245,000.
Right.
If the board is so inclined to support a recommendation, we would we would bring to the warrant committee an adjusted operating budget that reflects two changes: an increase to the school appropriation of $245,000 and a similar increase to the health insurance budget of $71,000 to account for any potential benefits with the additional staffing that could be hired with that additional funding. So we would anticipate utilizing all the new state aid money to those two purposes.
So, just Mr. Milano, so my understanding is the school committee meets tomorrow night.
Correct.
So if we and you recommend that this additional funding goes in that direction, then there is a possibility we could get a consensus from the school committee on that budget, and then you're going to also go in front of the warrant committee, I assume, at
Yes,
some point prior to town meeting?
I've alerted the warrant committee chair. He'll look to set up a meeting before town meeting. We're going to, in our discussions, we'll see what the logistics are like, but the idea would be to have that with a little bit of notice, so we can have everything prepared well in advance of town meeting, rather than doing it the night of town meeting.
And
So
perhaps
potentially
get a
next
green,
week.
perhaps have a green.
Have it ready to go
Have a
for the
green
first
sheet
night of
ready.
town meeting. The other thing I do want to mention is, as we're going through closing out our federal funding, ARPA money with the county, we are seeing an opportunity to potentially extend some funding, which would then be able to be utilized for previously approved money that was allocated for school needs. We'll have an opportunity to potentially extend that money into fiscal '25. So the benefits of the town will be beyond the $245,000 we're talking about here, but there is a potential for additional ARPA funding for school positions in fiscal '25 that we're working through with the county now to extend previously approved projects beyond the June 30th deadline that the county has set.
Ms. Bradley?
So my question, Mr. Milano, is if you believe that the Senate is going to come in with the same numbers as the House did?
I think that is an unknown.
Right.
Typically,
So what if we overshoot?
there is a risk. Typically, what we will see is the House and Senate will look for a place to increase local aid.
Correct.
But we're going with a little bit of trust that that will be the case. And if we are wrong, then we'll have to make an adjustment if that's what happens.
Can I ask a follow-up?
It's possible we could be higher.
It could be,
Ms.
yeah.
Bradley?
It could be.
Have you heard anything from the delegation about where they think that, like, have you heard anything from Senator Timmelty about what he's heard about whether or not the numbers will be the same, or from Representative Driscoll? Have you heard anything from them?
No, the comments that we've heard to date have been that this is a challenging budget year.
Right.
And they're going to do the best they can. And I
Okay.
think, I think it's a strong vote for cities and towns that what the House released.
Right.
And I think holding on to that in and of itself will be a victory.
It's a huge thing. I mean, everybody that I've spoken to is having issues with their school budgets. So this is great. I'm just concerned if they don't make this money, if they don't meet this mark, which is a pretty high mark, what are our plans? Do we have a backup? Do we have plan C?
So there's two elements to that. If town meeting appropriates it, that would be the budget and that would be the forecast. So we would know
Okay.
going in, we'd either have to say, after a couple months, see where our local receipts are other things coming in higher?
Okay.
Or if they're not, we would have to potentially reduce appropriations at a fall town meeting.
Right.
Mr. Zoll?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm supportive of this. I think because specifically the money's increased based on school and school need and per pupil spending. I think it fits 100% with the idea of the House and hopefully of the Senate as well, and magically almost gets us a little past what the schools needed. So it would be great to create a consensus around this here, school committee and warrant committee before town meeting. So I'm supportive of it. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Other comment? Mr. Wells?
So this wouldn't require a vote, right? Because the responsibility of the budget is Mr. Milano's?
So we voted to support Mr. Milano's prior budget. So it seems to me if we want to support this, it's the warrant committee's budget. Mr. Milano makes a recommendation to the warrant committee,
Support the amendment.
but we can support Mr. Milano's recommendation
I'll
to the
make that
warrant
motion,
committee.
Mr. Chair.
So
I just want to see if you want one, so now I'm making it.
That's right.
I'll second it.
All right, so the motion is to support the town administrator's recommendation for a revised budget. And the motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Mr. Woods?
I just want to thank, I had multiple conversations with Chair Carroll and also with Member Mark Loring, and as you know, this was a very tough thing, and for them, especially for Mark, this is a new experience for him. You know, and Chair Carroll sits on Capital with me, and you know, as you know, we went through like a long exercise a couple of weeks ago, and I'm very pleased. I know how passionate she is and how much she cares about this, and so I'm glad. I had a feeling that something from somewhere. I wasn't sure what tree it was. I know we've talked about several different trees in this room recently. I had a feeling it would come from some tree, and I did know from Representative Driscoll that, as Mr. Milanos, it seems that both the House and the Senate are strongly committed to, you know, local cities and towns this year, and that's a benefit to us as we're reaping. So, thank you for that, and thank you to them for all their hard work as well.
We've been able to get to consensus 12 out of the 13 years that I've been doing it, and I always say it's bubble gum and chicken wire.
You're exactly
figure
right.
It out, you figure out, you know, and you know, you get a different piece of
I say
bubble
paper
gum.
clips. I'm
yeah.
put together paper clips.
So yeah, so hopefully, you know, we don't want to get out in front of our skis. Hopefully, the school committee and the warrant committee will see the benefit of it. But I guess that remains to be seen. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Unanimous. All right.
Call them on the phone.
Item 6A, Mr. Milano, is it? Mr. Milano, on the ARPA projects for Lower Guile Turf Field.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I alluded to a few minutes ago, the Norfolk County has had a deadline on its ARPA projects of June 30th of 24. The way the federal rules around the ARPA funding work is that it has to be obligated or contracted by the end of this calendar year. It has to be spent down by the end of calendar year 26. So the money doesn't have to be spent this year, but it does have to be obligated. The county's on a slightly different timeline because since the money's flowing through them, they want to be able to reallocate money if cities and towns in Norfolk County aren't going to use their share. So they've moved the timelines up so that if Milton's not going to use $100,000, they can go give it a Needham. Now, we don't want to be in a position of doing that, so we're trying to work with the county to draw down any potential money, if there's any allocated or unspent money in some of the projects that have been approved, to make sure that we use that up. Which brings us to the Lower Guile Turf Field, which as it's gone through the permitting process, we have been held up through a permitting process at the Conservation Commission and now through an appeal to the Mass Department of Environmental Protection for a superseding order of conditions. That superseding order hasn't been issued yet, which has meant the project is unable to move forward into bidding, into contracting, into construction. And since it remains an unknown, we're starting to run up into timelines issues with the county. It remains possible that we could get a superseding order of conditions, the project could move forward, and we remain on track to utilize the ARPA funding within the county's rules without a major issue. There is a chance that that won't happen, and we could be looking in July, August, and not having able to move the project forward. Norfolk County is starting to get nervous about that allocated money, that it's not going to get obligated in time for either Milton to use it or somebody else to use it. So the solutions here would be, the options as I see them are, move forward as is and anticipate a superseding order of conditions and moving into bidding, contracting, construction ASAP. The other option would be to replace the ARPA allocation for this project with town funds. This is a $2.4 million budgeted project. $1.6 million has been approved for borrowing. $400,000 has been approved for free cash. Those are both at the 22 annual town meeting. And then the last portion of funding is $400,000 from ARPA. So the options for appropriation locally would be, it has to be a town meeting vote. It could be at this town meeting to replace that $400,000 in ARPA funding by increasing the borrowing authorization. It could be at a fall town meeting if by the time we get through permitting, that's where it puts us. It just, since we don't know when these approvals will come down and when the project will get going, when that appropriation is available is kind of a factor in determining whether the project could move forward right away. So, my thought is that if we want to guarantee that this funding is in place and there's no risk to that, then the prudent course would be to bring it to this town meeting under Article 4, the capital budget article, to increase that authorization. I know we're a couple weeks out of town meeting, but I just wanted to put that on folks' radar as it's an unknown right now, and it's an important project to folks in town. And so if we want to make sure it's able to move forward right away, then this might be what needs to be done. We've been talking internally. I haven't engaged with the park commissioners on it. I haven't engaged with the capital improvement planning committee.
You haven't, or you
I have not. I've talked to the parks department. But so that's where it is now at this point. And since so that's my update. Happy to take any questions or get any thoughts.
And just to be clear, so if we don't want to risk losing the ARPA money, then and we increase the borrowing authorization, then we would reallocate the $400,000 ARPA money for some other project.
Some other eligible expense, correct?
And do you have that something in mind for
so
that?
The easiest thing under the ARPA formula and rules is to go to water and sewer infrastructure. You know, we have a water project going out to bid in the next couple of weeks. We have a sewer project that just went out to bid. That's contracted. That's beginning. So there are projects there that the money could be pushed to that would save the town money. But we have already used a lot of ARPA money on water and sewer infrastructure. It's just in terms of what's quickest, fastest, and easiest, those would be the first answer. There are other potential capital type projects that might be possible, but it takes a little bit more negotiating and discussing with
But
the
we don't
county.
need to make that decision tonight.
Correct.
Right. Okay. Other comments or questions? Mr. Wilks.
So we'll schedule a capital meeting to talk about this sooner versus later, like this week?
Yeah, if it was going to be, correct, if it's going to be an updated capital article, then it should go to capital. It's just in terms of trying to get the ball rolling, I wanted to check in with this board first.
So I'll do that, Mr. Chair. I'll schedule that for next week.
Mr. Zoll.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I think anybody that has a kid that plays soccer or football or lacrosse or field hockey or you name the outdoor sport knows that almost every other town has fields like this that are in better shape, that don't get closed all the time. All the soccer kids had to lost a game this past weekend because of the rain. It's 2 weekends in a row that we've lost games. So you know the need for this field and for our kids to be able to play is extraordinary. How realistic is it that that this would be denied, given that so many other towns across the Commonwealth have fields like this?
You mean for the ARPA funding or for a town meeting?
No, for at the EPA.
Oh,
EPA.
DEP, so I don't have a good answer on that. I think typically they look at the science and apply the Wetlands Protection Act, and typically it would be orders of conditions that are issued by the conservation commissions, like this one has an order of conditions, are typically held up at a superseding order level. So.
Okay. So we should anticipate that it should
I think we are confident that it will get approved.
Okay.
It's not so much about getting approved. I think it's more the timeline of when that comes down.
Understood.
Is the concern.
It's really unfortunate that it's taken us so long to get this, that we're losing this kind of important funding for something that our kids need so badly.
Agreed.
This was the
Thank you,
question.
Mr. Chairman.
This is the question. Oh, sorry, sorry, Ann, go ahead.
I just had a question. If Member Wells does a capital committee meeting this week or
Thursday
early next week,
morning, yeah, Thursday.
whenever, what is the next step? Do we have to meet again? Does the finance committee? I don't think the finance committee needs to meet. I just wanted to know procedurally what the next step is.
So it'd be capital, select board, and then it goes to warrant committee ahead of town meeting.
Okay.
Well, and the goal would be on this one as well is to get a green sheet prior
Yep.
to
Right.
town
Yep.
meeting. And so this board should probably take it up next week after capital.
Agree.
We don't need to meet, though.
No, we don't need to
Yeah.
meet, but my,
Just in
So the
terms of
way
the
I would
days?
see it is, at least if I'm correct, if the schedule's right, capital meets Thursday, approves it, night one of town meeting, select board meeting, votes and approves it, we have a green sheet going into night one of town meeting, do I got that right? Is that right?
You could have a meeting next week
Yeah, you could have,
with the
yeah.
select board and then have the green sheet prior to the first night of town meeting.
So if we
which
met
is
at
probably a better
7:30,
idea.
maybe a morning meeting on Thursday right afterwards, would that be?
We've missed the posting for Thursday. It would have to be Friday at the absolute earliest after business hours are open, and then more like for flexibility, early next week, most likely.
What day's today? We missed the posting for
Today's
next
Tuesday.
Thursday? For a week from Thursday?
Oh, sorry, for a
Oh,
week.
yeah,
I was
week-
thinking Thursday in 2 days.
Oh, no, no, I
you
meant
meant
next
Thursday, too.
I meant next Thursday. I mean, there's enough going on. I was thinking next Thursday, or next Wednesday. I don't,
Okay, we can connect.
unless you really want to do it Friday.
No, no, I just assumed that's what you meant.
There
So,
will be a meeting this board on the Wednesday evening,
right.
so you can,
So,
so you can
so now
take
let's
it up.
post for, I can't do Friday. I can't. This week I'm,
Okay, I'll connect to the end. We can pull the members. And like I said, it is quite conceivable, and the county has been more than understanding around the timeline, and they're not holding us to June 30th. The question is if it's July 30th, August 30th, at what point do they say you got to use it on something else because,
Right.
or give it back to us? And that's
Worst
not,
case.
we're not giving it back to them to be used elsewhere, so we're going to use it. Just that is the risk, is the timeline around it all.
I have a few hours invested in this project. I'm familiar.
So, I mean, this board could act, but it's probably better to have the capital committee act
I
prior to
think
this board
we're,
acting.
I'd want to talk to Amy and just make sure, well, I'm sure Nick already is, but that's,
All right, anything else on this? Or anything else on item 7? Or item 7, I'm sorry, item 6. Or item 6A. Back to item 9, which is discussion, update approval, this is for the
town meeting
the,
articles?
Town meeting articles. Is anything that we have on this pressing, Mr. Milano, or is there anything?
No, I put it on here in case the board had any interest in discussing any of the articles. The warrant is on the website. If you haven't received it in the mail, please let me know. It was put in the mail on April 15th and taken much longer this time than it has any previous time. So I apologize for that.
A lot of
but-
printing being done. A lot of printing being done this year. Ms. Bradley.
Thank you. Mr. Milano, are there extra copies at Town Hall?
Yes, we had some made. We don't have them yet, but
Okay, so if
will
people
have
that were supposed to receive them, so I assume town meeting members,
yeah, we have a lot printed for this town meeting because there might be turnover as well among the members. So we
I
always bring
see.
extras on night one.
great, thank you.
And, Mr. Chair,
Mr.
It's available online.
Correct.
As
So we don't
is.
have to kill the trees.
So if folks are curious, they can look at it right now.
Yes, the warrant is on the town, we've set up a town 2024 annual town meeting landing page. The warrant is currently up there. And as presentations and information are prepared for town meeting, that information will also be posted on that webpage. So please do check back on it occasionally to see if any new information, such as something about the local historic district study committee or potential green sheets, will also be posted there as we approach town meeting.
thank you, Mr. Milton.
Anything further on this? Item 10, discussion and approval, MBTA Communities Act status and issues. Item 10A, I don't know that there's anything non-executive session in terms of an update. Item B, we do have proposed letters to the governor, lieutenant governor, Boston MPO,
Right.
and the HLC, Housing and Livable Communities. The reason for the delay, they have now been reviewed and approved by special counsel and town council, with one suggested, if we want to take them up, one suggested add to each of them, and that is adding, if the town were to prevail in the litigation, particularly with respect to its challenge to the guidelines as ultra-virus, the action described above would unquestionably be unfair. So that would be one add to the letters, if we want to take action on them this evening.
oh, sorry.
Sure. Yeah, sure. This is hot off the press. If the town were to prevail in the litigation, particularly, and this would go into kind of the main paragraph, if the town were to prevail in the litigation, particularly with respect to its challenge to the guidelines as ultra-virus, the action described above would unquestionably be unfair, and that action was the withdrawal of funding or the penalty from the Boston MPO on the TIP funding.
So, Mr. Chair, so it would be a motion approved, subject to include the edits.
Yes, that one edit, yes, subject to include the edit. And I think there's one add we need to make on
Just a couple
the
of
caption for the Attorney General. Ms. Musto,
Thank you. When did we get these?
this afternoon.
Oh, these? Yeah, these came this afternoon.
Yeah.
I knew that.
I didn't
This
see it.
afternoon, yeah. And so we can defer on them. I mean,
Well, no, I mean, I
yeah.
think if we want to, but I mean, do you have, are we going to put them up there or to look at, or
Yeah, do you
can we
have,
do that
do you have that,
quickly?
Nick?
Yeah, I'm pulling them up now. Give me one moment.
So you don't- it would just be helpful.
Yeah. And we just heard from town council, so.
I mean, I think it sounds
Special
like a
counsel.
good idea. I just want to read it quickly.
Yeah, no, that's
I didn't have a chance to. Okay.
It was, as we discussed before, asking each of the Seaport
Right.
Economic Council, governor, lieutenant governor,
Yeah.
HLC, and Boston MPO, asking them or making clear that the fair and reasonable course here would be not to impose any penalty or withdrawal of funding until at least 3 months after a decision. And as the ad says,
That you just read, yeah.
is if we win, it's particularly unfair
Right.
to do it now. So, so we would add that. We would add that.
Does he know where he wants to put it?
Right, where is he
Is
putting
there a
it?
place where he wants to put it?
Well, no, he just.
He wants to
kind
include
of left it to me, but he just. I think it would go.
Probably right there.
I think it would go right there at the end of the.
Yep.
Before thank you.
Yes,
Yeah.
before thank you.
So I'd make that motion
Right.
subject to it.
I got a question.
Ms.
No,
Brown.
sorry.
Sorry. So this is great, except what if we lose and they end up giving us this money? Then what do we do? And we've already got projects started with this money. Then what happens?
They haven't imposed a penalty on us.
No,
So
no.
yeah,
You're asking them to give us this money,
Right.
and if we win the lawsuit, yippee skippy,
Right.
they should have given it to us anyways.
Right.
If we lose the lawsuit and we've started using this money, how do we repay it?
Yippee
we'd
skippy
have to?
because
Yeah.
they haven't taken it away from us. They don't take it
Yeah.
away from. The idea is they don't take it away from us until we are found not, and we are found by the court to have been in error. Right?
But one of these specifically, we received a letter saying that it was subject to the approval of the MBTA communities.
Right.
So rectify that in my mind. If it's subject to the approval of that MBTA communities, how is it that now we think that we are owed that money, even if they've already told us that it was subject to that vote?
Because the theory and the idea in the letter is it is in court. The Attorney General has said not to impose any penalty until 3 months after an injunction. So we're saying if you want to be consistent with the Attorney General, then you should wait at least until 3 months after if we lost. If we win, we shouldn't have been penalized anyway. So we shouldn't be penalized if we're going to be penalized. At the very least, it shouldn't be until 3 months after.
Even though we knew
it
about
was-
this prior to taking the vote? We as a town knew
No,
about
no,
this?
we didn't, this
Well,
was not,
the-
No, they gave us a letter saying that, no, they absolutely did, saying that it's subject to the approval. We absolutely have that letter, right?
Understood.
Okay.
Understood. Understood.
So on this letter specifically, we received a letter prior to the vote of our town
Right.
that said that this amount was subject to the vote, correct?
That's
And
correct.
now we're saying, yeah, we heard you, but we want to change it and we want to be okay with what the Attorney General says. I'm just confused.
So I think what I intend to say, and what I think we're saying is, let's all be consistent. The Attorney General says, don't impose a penalty until 3 months after an injunction imposed by the court, if an injunction is imposed. So if the executive branch wants to be consistent with the Attorney General, which I think is only fair, then the executive branch would take the same view. The executive branch can change their view. They don't have to say, well, we said it was going to be this way, and so we're going to keep it this way. The executive branch could say, yeah, you're right, it seems fair that if the Attorney General doesn't think it should be imposed until 3 months after, we'll take the same view. So it's just it's a request for consistency among the different constitutional officers. Mr. Zoll.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. Speaking of consistency, members of this body and many of the folks on the No campaign gleefully pointed out that we would be losing money from the state, but not that much. And it was determined that that was a small price to pay for the glorious revolution or whatever it was to ignore state law and get sued by the Attorney General. So I find it a little bit of trying to have your cake and eat it too by sending these letters in when we knew that this was the cost of voting no. We knew what the costs were, and I was derided for pointing out that it was very clear that these were the costs. We knew that this was going to happen. And I have to take a different approach from you. I feel like this is, if my kid breaks a rule and then they say, well, I shouldn't have to suffer the consequences for breaking this rule because I didn't know that, you were serious about taking my cell phone away, but you're really serious about it. And now I feel like I need to appeal that decision. We knew what the consequences were. And I feel like, the chances of this being considered are zero. We've already tarnished this town's reputation by our actions. And now we're the same people that had made the case that this was the cost of freedom are now saying, well, we actually don't want to pay that cost because, we didn't realize it was actually going to impact the town, even though we were told by the governor, by the lieutenant governor, by the attorney general, by the legislature when they passed this bill, that we were going to pay this cost. So I would not sign this. I will not vote to approve it. Mm-hmm. I think it's another fool's errand in the litany of fool's errands that is this quest to have your cake and eat it too. I think it's wrong, and I won't be voting for it, and I won't say any more about it because I know we want to try to have shorter meetings.
Thank you, Mr. The only thing I would suggest is what has changed is the view of the Attorney General on this, and so it seems to me we have a fair and reasonable ask here that since the Attorney General has taken this view that no penalty should be imposed until 3 months after a decision, it's fair and reasonable to ask all of the town actors to take that same view. So that's my view of what has changed, and that's the Attorney General's request. So that's my view. Other comments or questions? Ms. Musto.
Thank you. I also agree that we're trying to mirror what was in that information that the Attorney General provided with, she said, the penalty and with holding off for 3 months on it. So I think it would be prudent consistency to do this and to send off these letters. And, again, we've hired an attorney to help us with some of these matters. And, again, I'm not going to go into all the details because we shouldn't be going into it here, but state law versus all of these things that Mr. Zoll said, I mean, we have an attorney who's guiding us on all of this. He has reviewed these and has guided us that he thinks that this is a good idea, I suppose, if he's added the wording in.
Yeah, no, let me be clear. The request was to make sure this is okay, to make sure there's nothing, that this won't compromise the litigation. Right. And the answer was that it wouldn't. That was the
attorney did not suggest we send these.
No, that was my
Correct.
idea. That was our
discussion.
discussion.
So let's just be clear about what the attorney is asking us to do.
And so, not to again, for clarity. So the response was, there's no issue with sending them, and here's a suggestion, and that was that one suggestion. That was the idea. So, Ms. Musto.
Okay, so for clarification, Mr. Chair, it sounds like he did see these letters.
Absolutely,
though,
absolutely.
And he didn't say we should not send them.
He didn't say we should not send it. That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Right. That's exactly right. He signed off on it. Here's the thing. When you're involved in litigation, you want to make sure your lawyer knows everything you're doing. You don't do anything without telling your lawyer. Mm-hmm. So we told our lawyer, we said, is it okay to do this? He said, yes, and here's a suggested ad. Mm-hmm. That's the takeaway.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Zoll.
Just a quick request, too. We need to be keeping count of how much this is costing the town. These costs, these legal fees, this is the no campaign needs a bill for how much we're spending on this, because it's ridiculous how much funding we've lost. We're paying an attorney $900 an hour because we want to make sure that we have the best attorneys. Like these are real costs for the town, and the way that this was described was that these would be insignificant and nothing's happened, and now we're sending these letters. So I just want to point out, anybody who says that they're fiscally responsible should really be looking very closely at this, how much money the town is spending on this, and something that we are very sure, lots of us are very sure that has very little chance of winning. So that's just it, Mr. Chair. I think as we talk about attorneys, looking at things, the fees that are being racked up, it's important to keep in mind every time we're doing something like this, it costs the town money.
And it's a fair point, Mr. Zoll. The only thing I'd point out on this one is this is part of the fixed fee. So there's no additional cost other than the fixed fee on this one. But absolutely, everyone in town is going to know what the costs were. But this is no additional cost. This is just a part of the fixed fee. Ms. Musto.
Thank you. I'm hearing a lot from Mr. Zoll about the no campaign is responsible, the no, that people have voted no, they're responsible for this, they're responsible for that. This was a town-wide referendum. These are members of the community. These are every neighbor in the community. So when you're saying that, you're really singling out people in our community. This was a community referendum vote. And I think we need to respect that. And if we're talking about leaving, this is costing us a lot of money, let's be honest, we left $2.5 million on the table for a new animal shelter that we could have had too. So, and we've had many things that this town has fought for that were right. We've litigated many things that we felt were noble causes. And so I don't like this insinuation that a certain group should be tagged with a certain cost. These are your residents in this town. I think it's pretty offensive. Thank you.
Mr. Wells.
Mr. Chair, so to belabor, I'm not going to, I've said this many times, we represent all the citizens of this town, we do. And you have the right to speak. To assume that someone's not fiscally responsible because of the way they voted, it's just not correct. And I could say a lot of things I'm not. Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we support the request, support sending the letters subject to the edits that you made specific reference to tonight. And that's all I'm going to say about it at this point.
I'll second.
Just as a friendly amendment, just a motion to
send the letters.
Approve and send the letters. Sign and approve and sign the letters.
Okay. Sign and approve the letters, yes, subject to that.
Okay. All right, motion's been made and seconded.
I have a question.
Ms. Bradley.
Is this going to be our names listed underneath, or is it going to be just you as the chair? Sometimes we sign it where it's just you as the chair. Sometimes we don't have our names listed underneath. I'm just trying to get a sense of where that is at.
So our practice has been this year.
Right, that the majority rules, I get that.
To list the names. I think.
On everything?
I
That's
think
not
we
true.
have.
So the way it's usually is signed by Chair Michael Zulus on behalf of the Milton Select Board with the names listed at
underneath
that
it?
point,
Yeah.
but no signatures
No
associated
signatures.
with
Right,
those names.
that's
Okay.
exactly right. The way it is there. That's the way we've been doing it. It's done different times, different years.
I just
but
was
that's the way
curious.
we've been doing it this year. So, but that's not that's just, some years, some letters, some years everyone signs it, some years, we've done it different ways, it seems, over the years. So that's just the way we've done it this year. Mrs. Zoll.
Just want to respond quickly to Ms. Musto's point. Of course, I understand that we represent everybody. There were a lot of people in this town that voted yes. There were a lot of people in this town that voted no. I understand that. I respect the decision. I have not tried to interfere with this process at all. What I'm simply pointing out is that some of the leaders of the no campaign made promises around the financial impact of their vote, that were not true. They weren't true. And so all I'm doing is just pointing that out. I'm not singling anybody out by name. I'm not throwing any fireballs. I'm not saying anything that I didn't say on February 12th. The allegations and the insinuations about what this was going to cost the town by the no campaign were false. And we're paying the cost for that now. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm ready to vote.
Ms. Musto.
Okay, I think we should just move forward, but Mr. Chair, but I'm not going to sit here and listen to a member say something that is very biased. Okay, so I think you're insinuating that one side said falsehoods, another one didn't present it correctly or whatever. I think that's wrong. We don't do that to our residents. We don't do that to people. And I think that you obviously have an opinion, and that's fine. That's your personal opinion. But don't start making accusations. I would caution you about making accusations about people that were running either campaign.
I duly cautioned.
Thank you.
Other comments or questions? Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? 3-2. Okay. Item 11, discussion approval contract with the Metropolitan Area Planning Council for an economic development plan. Is this Mr. Milano?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. We received an earmark in a state economic development bill to be used on economic development and economic development planning. We had discussed this at the Select Board some time ago now, and have been working since then to secure services on an economic development plan. The intention behind the plan is to engage with residents, with business community on economic growth, and we're talking here business and commercial growth. Housing is a whole topic that will be dealt with in other planning initiatives. This is a planning initiative specifically around business growth and commercial growth in Milton, to gauge people's temperature on it, see if there is interest. If there is interest, what kind of business or commercial growth would folks be interested in, and if so, where? There will be numerous community focus groups, a community-wide survey, community-wide meetings, and gauging around East Milton, Granite Ave, Milton Village, and Central Ave as our currently kind of existing business districts, but also open to looking at other places in town where folks might think some commercial growth might be beneficial. The cost is just under $100,000, driven because of the numerous public engagement sessions. That's what's driving the cost here. But we've been working with MAPC to prepare that. The full proposals in the packet, if this board's supportive, we'll go ahead and get that executed and put this state funding to work.
Comments or questions? Or motions?
You need a motion? I'll make a motion. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Rex.
No, go
Were you
ahead.
raising your hand?
Go ahead.
I'll make a motion. Oh, I just jumped. I'll make a motion to approve the contract with the MAPC for an economic development plan.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. All right, item 12, proclamations for Earth Day and Arbor Day.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chief. Do you want? Oh,
We have them. We have them.
At
in
least
the-
for the purpose of discussion, I'll make a motion to approve the proclamation celebrating Earth Day and Arbor Day.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? Do we want to read the proclamations? They're not that long.
Let's read them. I think
All
that
right,
sure.
we'll read
In the
them. All
spirit
right.
of-
Does anyone do anyone like to read them? I mean, I can
I'll
do
do
it.
one. If you do
wanna
one, I'll do one.
You want to do Arbor Day?
Sure.
All right.
And I didn't bring cheetahs tonight. I can't read that. There's no way.
Oh, you can't.
I didn't bring cheetahs.
Oh,
I got cheetahs.
I
You
just
want my
looked at like,
cheaters?
here, I
Did
can.
you?
What number?
125.
Oh, yeah, that'll work. I'll do it. I'll do it.
Oh, I can't wait to see this. Give them to me.
You got to get the progressive lenses.
It's okay, they're Kate Spade. They'll look great on you.
So, whereas in 1872, the Nebraska Board of Agriculture established a special day to be set aside for the planting of trees, and whereas this holiday, called Arbor Day, was first observed with the planting of more than 1 million trees in Nebraska, and whereas Arbor Day is now observed throughout the nation and the world, and whereas trees can be a solution to combating climate change by reducing the erosion of our precision topsoil by wind and water, cutting heating and cooling costs, moderating the temperature, cleaning the air, producing life-giving oxygen, providing habitat for wildlife, and whereas trees are a renewable resource, giving the paper wood for our homes, fuel for our fires, and countless other wood projects, and whereas Trees increase property values, enhance the economic vitality of business areas, beautify our community, and are a source of joy and spiritual renewal. And now, therefore, we, the Milton Select Board, do proclaim April 26, 2024 as Arbor Day in the town of Milton. We urge all residents of Milton to support efforts to protect our trees and woodlands, encourage citizens to plant trees to gladden the heart, and promote the well-being of this and future generations. Given this day, April 23rd, 2024, signed by the Chair on behalf of the Board, Michael F. Sewell as Chair, Aaron G. Bradley, Vice Chair, Roxanne F. Musto, Secretary, Richard G. Wells, Jr., there's a typo there in that one, member, and Benjamin D. Zoll, member.
No, I need those, because I got to go next.
What was the typo?
They
It's
misspelled,
Wells.
misspelled
It's
Wells?
just in my name.
It's his name.
Really?
Yep, there's an S
If we
missing.
could just cure all the wills of this community, this is what the proclamation would be.
And the sharing of glasses, Mr. Wells.
Carrying glasses, yeah.
Okay, my turn. Earth Day proclamation. Whereas the first Earth Day was enacted in 1970 and engaged over 20 million Americans to advocate for a cleaner environment. And whereas Earth Day now has become a worldwide event and has highlighted some of the most critical environmental issues on the world stage. And whereas Milton is blessed with a wealth of bountiful woodlands and waterways, often most visibly showcased in the Blue Hills Reservation, as well as our parks and riverside walking paths. And whereas Milton supports projects that demonstrate and encourage energy conservation, sustainability, and the usage of renewable energy. And whereas the town of Milton challenges every resident, we're challenging all of you, to help in conserving and protecting the environment via green activities such as recycling, water and energy conservation, tree planting, as Mr. Wells just spoke about, and active education about environmental issues. And whereas this year, Earth Day will celebrate its 54th anniversary of promoting the value of our planet and respect for all who live in it. Now, therefore, we, the Milton Select Board, do hereby proclaim Monday, April 22nd, 2024, through Friday, April 26, 2024, as Earth Week in the town of Milton, and urge all citizens of Milton to join us in efforts to help protect and preserve our environment for ours and future generations. Given this day, Tuesday, April 23rd, 2024, signed by the Chair on behalf of the Select Board, Michael F. Zulis, Chair, Aaron G. Bradley, Vice Chair, Roxanne F. Musto, Secretary, Richard G. Wells, typo, Jr., Member, and Benjamin D. Zoll, Member.
All right, we have a motion to approve them.
Yeah.
Did we already do that?
So she's,
that-
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
No,
All
we
right,
already did
sorry.
it.
All those in
Yeah, we
favor?
did that. Yeah, aye.
Aye.
Yeah, we did that.
Thank you.
We did.
Okay.
All right, great, thank you.
Roxanne
Item 13, discussion approval proclamation honoring the centennial celebration of President George H.W. Bush.
Wow.
And I apologize because I have Lynn, I have a whereas clause that I added just to make it clear about the centennial celebration, so I'll make a suggestion on the whereas clause. So the George and Barbara Bush Foundation contacted the town about the centennial celebration that is going to be taking place at the Bush Presidential Library on June 11th, 12th, and 13th, and wanted to know what they could do to complement any celebration that might take place in Milton for that. So we have a proposed proclamation that we can send down for the celebration down in College Station, Texas. So that will be on display if we do that. And this one I can read because I'll add one whereas clause just to I think fill in about the centennial proclamation. So this is a proclamation whereas George Herbert Walker Bush was born on June 12, 1924 at 173 Adams Street in Milton, Massachusetts. He was the second son of Prescott Bush and Dorothy Bush and brother to Prescott, Nancy, Jonathan, and William. The Bush family then settled in Greenwich, Connecticut. And whereas on his 18th birthday, President Bush enlisted in the United States Navy as an aviator. He was commissioned as an ensign in 1943 and promoted to lieutenant junior grade the following year. His squadron was assigned to the USS San Jacinto as a member of Air Group 51. President Bush was awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross for his role in the mission in Chickajima in 1944. And whereas President Bush met Ms. Barbara Pierce at a Christmas dance in 1941, While on leave from the Navy, they married. While he was on leave from the Navy, they married on January 6, 1945, in Rye, New York. They were married for 73 years and were the proud parents of George, Robin, Jeb, Neil, Marvin, and Dorothy. And whereas President Bush's career in public service continued to flourish, he was elected to the United States U.S. House of Representatives from Texas' 7th Congressional District and was later appointed by President Richard Nixon as the U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations. He also served as the chief of the U.S. Liaison Office in the People's Republic of China, chair of the Republican National Committee, and director of Central Intelligence Agency. And whereas in 1980, President Bush was chosen as President Ronald Reagan's running mate for the Republican Party, he faithfully served as Vice President of the United States of America from 1981 through 1989. And whereas on January 20, 1989, George H.W. Bush took the oath of office as the 41st President of the United States, President Bush and his administration led a successful geopolitical transition and addressed economic challenges that laid the foundation for future growth and prosperity. And this is my ad. Whereas the George and Barbara Bush Foundation is celebrating the life and legacy of our 41st president in this, the 100th anniversary of his birth, in a centennial celebration at the Bush Presidential Library on June 11, 12, and 13, 2024. Now, therefore, be it resolved that we, the Select Board of Milton, honor the legacy of President George H.W. Bush during the centennial celebration. So that is the rather bit longer proclamation. Mr. Wells.
So he's actually was appointed as an honorary member of the police department in 1990, which was the centennial of the Milton Police Department. And that's over there, and if you've ever been in the library, there's a whole case to him.
Yeah, that's right.
There is
a
case to his thing.
We could actually add that.
We could probably, I think we should probably add that
Yeah.
I don't know what month it's in there. I think it's August.
We can add it. Yeah.
But it's definitely in 1990. That was the centennial year of the Milton Police Department. He was appointed by the Select Board then as an honorary member. Sorry, Mr. Zoll.
No, that's fine. Only when you're finished.
No, I'm good.
Mr. Chair, it occurs to me, so if they're looking for maybe ways to honor him, I'm wondering if it wouldn't make sense to, at some point during the festival that we have on Hutchinson Field, which is, of course, like right next to where he was born, we could have a member of the Select Board maybe read that proclamation at some point, maybe earlier.
I can arrange that
great
for you.
idea.
Like, I was actually thinking, I wish, because you said the date, it's the following week. Maybe maybe we dedicate the fireworks in his, something
that's
this
fine.
year. Like,
That's fine. It'll be prior to his birthday. His birthday is the 24th, so it'll be prior to his birthday.
No, his birthday's the 12th.
Oh, was it the
12th?
I'm sorry.
Yes, the 12th.
I'm sorry.
But it's okay. I agree. I agree
that's
with
a good
Mrs.
idea.
Zoll. I think we can do something like that.
And then when we send it through, we could let them know.
Right, and
Yeah.
and
Let the
actually probably
foundation know.
send a video.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
could do that too.
We could send a video. That would be nice. That'd be nice. Okay. All right. So, motion on the proclamation. Do we have a
I'll
motion?
make a
As
motion to accept the proclamation as amended, and
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous. Okay. Item 14, discussion and approval donation from Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center to the Milton Coalition in the amount of $15,000.
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chair, to approve the donation of $15,000 from the BI Deaconess Medical Center to the Milton Coalition.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further
I was
discussion?
waiting for Roxanne.
Oh,
I was
what
just
did I
gonna
forget? Oh, do you,
Well, I'm an
Sorry.
employee under the Beth
Right.
Israel umbrella, so I'm going to abstain.
you'll abstain, okay. You can
Yes.
abstain, okay.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and one abstention. It's 401. Item 15, meeting minutes from March 12th, March 26th, and April 2nd.
Mr. Chair, before we make the motion, I wasn't present at the April 2nd, so we'll have to break it up so that I can
Okay.
abstain from
So given that, which one did you say, Mr. Zoll? Which one?
April
that.
2nd.
April 2nd. So I'll make a motion to approve the amended meeting minutes for March 12th and March 26th.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
And I'll make a motion, Mr. Chair, to approve the meeting minutes for April 2nd, 2024.
I'll second, but I have an adjustment that I
Okay.
wanted to read.
Do you want me to make it?
Sure.
Oh, okay.
Well, I don't know if we want
All
to,
right.
Sure, motion's been made and seconded, and with a proposed amendment. For which minutes?
on the 2nd,
April 2nd. Oh, that's what we're talking about.
right, because we took
Sorry.
that out
Yes,
separately,
yes,
correct?
right, yes.
Yeah. So, let me find it here. Under, on page 3, under letter B, engagement and fee agreement.
Hold on, April 2nd. April 2nd. So this is item which, I'm sorry,
Item B,
item B. What's the number, is there a number?
page 3.
Oh, page 3.
It's,
Oh, I get it, yep,
you
I
see
got
it,
it.
okay.
Yep,
So there's a thing that said Ms. Musto will offer a suggestion, so I'm going to tell you what the suggestion was.
okay,
Under B, the last
Yep.
2 lines.
yep,
So what I wanted to put in there in place of it was to strike that following the vote, Ms. Musto, Ms. Bradley, that line there. And instead, I was going to put in, Ms. Musto had expressed her concerns of Ms. Bradley continuing to abstain regarding the hiring of attorneys to represent the town of Milton regarding the MBTA lawsuit and not taking a vote of yes or no. An exchange regarding voting abstentions followed.
all right, so that's a proposed amendment to April 2nd. I might suggest, it's a little bit of a long amendment. Do we want to defer on
Yeah,
that?
let's defer.
Do we want to defer? Is that okay?
That's
if we
fine, we can defer,
Why don't we
sure.
defer on-
Mr. Chair, well, if we're looking at that one too, I wasn't there, but the way that Article 5 reads, it says Ms. Bradley and Mr. Zoll agreed that the FY 2025 capital and operational budgets are not modified. It sounds like I was there, even though it says at the top I was absent.
Right.
So it
Okay.
may be, if
Make
we're
that-
going to
yeah,
strike
make that
it, we
revision.
should
Yeah.
figure that out.
Lynn, do you have that one as well? It might have been, they might have been referring
It might have been
to the
referring
finance
to,
committee.
I'm sure that's what it
finance
was.
committee
but it
meeting.
would
I'm
be
sure
good-
I was.
It would be good to
Make
just to
that
make
clear.
sure that that was clear.
Okay, so we'll amend, we'll have a red line of those minutes for the next meeting.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Item 16, Town Administrator's Report.
Was not prepared to add much this evening on that.
Okay,
so I
that's fine.
apologize. I
Don't
think I
don't
have-
feel compelled.
You won't be penalty, there's no penalty.
All right,
He
is
yields
that
back
it?
his minutes to you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Zoll reminded me that Footloose is coming up this weekend.
Yes.
We were looking at tickets the other day for my family. So
Yes.
I think it's Friday at 7, Saturday at 2, Saturday at 7, Sunday at
And
2.
Sunday at 2, yes. Yes.
And I'll cede my time to any other members.
Ms. Musto.
And there's also on Sunday, Light the Way.
Sunday night.
Sunday
yeah.
night
Sunday
at the
night.
gazebo at
6
6:30.
o'clock.
That's right.
6:30
I
or
think
6?
it's 6:30, I
That's right.
believe.
That's right.
Yeah, I believe it's at 6:30.
It's Coalition, it's Milton Coalition.
Mountain Coalition,
yeah.
yes.
Yep. My wife will be there. I may, too, but my wife will definitely.
One other thing too, Mr. Chair, since we're at tonight, is the second night is both probably
Passover,
know of
yep.
Passover, and I think we should wish
Yes.
very blessed
Yep.
Passover to Rabbi and all of our Jewish residents. I was very honored last night to attend my first ever Seder dinner, my wife and I, at the Cohen family in Newton. It's quite an, there's 30-something people there, it's quite an event. Even though I've been exposed pretty much to a lot of Hebrew and Jewish customs from my time in Israel, and since I've returned here, that the Seder dinner was quite something, and it's actually unique that in many homes it's repeated. It's a 2-night, you do it once,
Yep.
and then you repeat it again tonight with a totally different cast. So, happy Passover to everyone of Jewish faith who is, especially in our community, who's celebrating this week.
Yes.
Thank you for that. Are we all set with item 16, Mr. Milano?
Yes.
Item 17, Chair's Report. The only thing that I have is the Milton Fire Department had a busy weekend, a total of 40 incidents over the weekend, including 3 fires. One was a fire at Steel and Rye Restaurant on Saturday that brought a response, a needed response, and a very important response from the fire department. Also on Saturday, there was a trash fire on the second floor of a residence. Again, responded to by the fire department. And on Sunday, there was another fire at a residence in a second floor bedroom. Again, responded to by the fire department. So a very busy weekend and a very very important response, and shows once again the valor and the importance of our firefighters and our in this community, and the fact that they had 40 incidents, including 3 fires over the course of a weekend, shows how vital they are in our community. So thank you to the fire department and all the brave men and women who work for us in the fire department. So, that's all I have. Public comment response, item 18.
We're good. We did it.
We responded.
We made it.
Item 19, future meeting dates. There's an organizational meeting next a week from Wednesday night, and then the town meeting dates. And then future agenda items, we don't, we don't have anything, I don't think, on there. Mr. Milano, do we need all of the executive, do we need all of the executive session items that are listed?
Yes.
Okay, all right, so, and I believe we may come back into open session. Oh, wait a minute, no, I guess we won't.
No.
But we might come back into open session on one. Item 26, but maybe not. No, we could, this could.
You wanna do that?
That could go back into open session later. It doesn't have to be done. That
Doesn't
can be,
have to be
it can be,
tonight?
yeah, it doesn't have to be tonight. All right, so I will move, pardon me, to enter into executive session for discussion regarding strategy with respect to litigation filed by the Attorney General of the Town of Milton, based on my belief that the discussion of the matter in open session may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the Select Board. The Select Board will not return to open session.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. This is a roll call vote. All those in favor, Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Musto?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zoll?
Yes.
Mr. Zulish, yes. I move into adjourn from open session and enter into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to current contract negotiations with non-union personnel based on my belief, non-union personnel, that's the town administrator.
Right.
That's, okay, all right.
That's one.
Yeah,
Okay.
no, I
That's
understand.
22.
I
Yeah.
understand. The town, based on the non-union personnel, the town administrator, based on my belief that discussion of this matter in open session may have a detrimental effect on the negotiating position of the Select Board. The Select Board will not return to open session.
I'll second.
Motion been made and seconded. All those in favor, Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Oh,
So, no, you're right, you're right.
Ms. Bradley?
Dave,
Ms. Musto?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zoll?
Yes.
Mr. Zulish, yes. And I will move to adjourn from open session and enter into executive session to review and approve executive session minutes dated as listed on the agenda.
I'll second.
And the board will not return to open session, sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, the board will not return to open session. All right. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Musto?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zoll?
Yes.
Mr. Zulish, yes. Let's see. Okay,
24?
yeah.
Or
I
22?
just said that. and I
I'm sorry,
think-
23.
I think those are
You did
broken up.
23, you
I-
did 23, 24?
I did that.
Oh, you did that,
I think
okay,
we're
you
going to
did that.
combine all of the executive
All
session
right.
review, because we're not going to release, this is, because we haven't approved them. We need to approve them
So
first.
25 then?
Yeah,
26?
Mr. Chair, sorry.
Mr. Milano.
This one where it says on the agenda review release, we did receive a request for those, so the board does need to consider the release of those. And this is item 23 on the agenda. Perhaps it's listed separately on the differently
Yeah,
on the
no, I
prepared
understand.
motions.
I understand. Yeah, I mean, I guess if the board wants to, it can. I mean, many times we'll.
It doesn't have to, but under
Right.
the open meeting law, the board has to discuss potential release.
Potential release,
Right.
yeah, okay. All
And then
right,
I can
so,
respond to the requester.
yeah, I understand. All right, so I will move to enter into, to adjourn from open session, enter into executive session to review/relief executive session minutes with the date shown on the agenda with respect to litigation filed by the town of Milton versus the Federal Aviation Administration. Select Board will not return to open session.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Musto?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zoll?
Yes.
Mr. Zulish, yes. All right. And then I will move to enter into, to adjourn from open session, enter into executive session to approve executive session minutes as listed on the agenda. The Select Board will not return to open session.
I'll second.
Motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Musto?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Mr. Zoll?
Yes.
Mr. Zulish, yes. Okay. That's okay, that's okay. I move to enter into executive session to discuss strategy with respect to collective bargaining, Milton Firefighters Local 1116, based on my belief that discussion of this matter in open session may have a detrimental effect on the bargaining position of the Select Board. The Select Board will not return to open session.
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Musto?
Yes.
Mr. Wells?
Yes.
Sorry, Mr. Wells?
Yes, I got it.
Mr. Zoll?
Yes.
Mr. Zulish, yes. Okay. I think I got it all.
You did.
Yep.
Nick, I think I got it all. All right.
Motion adjourned?
Motion's been made.
I'll second.
Motion's been made.
I thought you meant to go.
Motion's been made.
Just to skip.
Yeah.
Second? You
Second.
second?
It's been made and seconded.
I'm sorry.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you all, and the board will be back on TV sometime in May.